over 6 years since Holy Trinity Church first approached Future Wolverton to share their aspiration that the old school be retained for community use. As far as we are aware, this is Milton Keynes' first ever cooperatively owned community building. Whilst the focus of today might well be on the building works, this project is about much more than the refurbishment of a Grade 2 listed building. It's about improving the life chances of this lot, these lovely, amazing children and young people from Slated Road School.
I can only thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting us, which in turn is going to make an amazing difference to these young people's lives. So thank you very much.
This project came out of a real strong feeling held in this part of Wolverton, Old Wolverton, that everything that happened in Victorian Wolverton. There was a feeling that housing was coming, that the existing community was being surrounded by it, but that there was no way in which people who'd lived here a long time could connect with people who'd only just moved in. And this beautiful building was sitting here and had been sitting here for some time unused. There was just a very, very strong feeling that this building was part of that solution and historically had performed that role and could do so again. We were approached by Holy Trinity Church, the parochial church council who run the church, who had a long lease on the building. They had used the building as a church hall. They said to Future Wolverton, we know that this building needs to be retained for community use, but we also know that we can't do it. We've got our own beautiful Grade 1 historic building to look after. We want this building to remain as a community asset. In fact, we think it's essential that it remains as one because of the housing development that happened. The Radcliffe Trust were not against keeping it in community ownership, but they also knew that they ultimately didn't want the building anymore.
Well, this was built around 1850 as a schoolroom and schoolhouse. It was built by the Radcliffe Trust, who owned almost the entire parish. It's survived more or less intact, very little altered. It's a building of the mid-19th century by a known architect, Henry Couchman. I think actually its days as a school had probably come to an end by 1900. And from that point, it was used as a church hall by Holy Trinity. Our verger lived in the schoolhouse. The last verger was Joe Caudle. He lived there with his wife Margaret, very happily. They loved the place.
There was this huge, groundswell of opinion to say we want it back, and we really relied on that in Future Wolverton's funding applications. That desire, that really burning desire to have the building back was really important, as was the interest from the school. With the agreement of the Radcliffe Trust, we listed the building with Milton Keynes Council as a community asset. So basically we were making a marker to say this is an important building for this community, and it also gave us legally 6 months to actually work up the business case and get some money together to secure the ownership of it. That was a really important step, but we couldn't get too excited too quickly because we just needed to know if we could do it. So the first thing that happened was that we got some feasibility funding, and that partly came from Section 106 money via the local authority, and it partly came from the Architectural Heritage Fund.
As a heritage body, we're concerned with the old building to start with, and it is a building of architectural significance. It is listed, a very attractive building, and my colleague and I went along very early on to meet Marie Osborne and some of the directors to have a look around the building to see if it's the sort of thing that we wanted to support, which of course it was. The very fact that Future Wolverton had a plan for this building, which revolved around community use and enterprising activity meant that we looked at that and went, well, not only are you eligible, but this is a project we would like to support. And I think we knew that quite early on, that this was a quite exciting, quite unconventional and innovative potential project. And that's one of the reasons we gave these two early stage grants.
It was that money that was then used to build the basics of the case. So we were able to employ Shenstone and Partners architects who had looked after the building historically, so knew it very well.
Our main aim was to preserve the character of the building, but at the same time provide enough new facilities to make it viable. It's been a wonderful project working with them and exploring the possibilities, and they obviously talked with the school and developed the project.
The summer of around 2011, the school approached and said, we're interested in being a partner in this process.
Slatey Rose School, we're a complex needs school. We have children from 4 years old to 19 years old, and we're very much focused on giving our young people the best life chances. With the old schoolhouse being on our front doorstep, we were always interested in what was going on there and what was going to happen. Hearing from Future Wolverton about their plans to actually redevelop the site, we were very interested and were really pleased when Future Wolverton was so forthcoming in those discussions.
Quite how we were going to work with Slatey Rose with the building evolved, I think. It was always going to be the case that we were going to have a community centre next door, and the discussions about the cafe happened really early on.
Through the cafe there's so many skills to do with life and living that we want to develop in our young people, as well as that sort of socialisation. The bed and breakfast initially was earmarked to be rented out as a small dwelling, and on conversation of my own personal experience of how difficult it is to find a good price bed and breakfast around Milton Keynes during the week, we started to actually explore the possibility of our young people being involved in that side of a venture.
And it just instantly made sense that we would do that, and from that point we never talked again about letting this as a whole property.
It's the other side of those life and living skills that they're not getting in the cafe that we can now give them. It's been a fluid journey to get what I think is an amazing outcome.
Just at the point that I was looking for funding to actually purchase, Power to Change was launched. So this was a new grant scheme, and it was all about supporting community businesses. So exactly what we were trying to do. At that point, it was getting to crisis around securing the building. And the reason for that was that Mr. Caudle, who had lived here for over 60 years, sadly died in 2015. He died at the grand age of 94, and he died in the place that he loved and wanted to be. I know that he was passionate about this building and about the area. And I hope that he would be proud of what we've done.
When I first heard, I sort of had mixed feelings, to be honest, because I wasn't quite sure just what was going to happen. But I mean, now I'm absolutely delighted, and I know he would be. I just know he would.
As soon as Mr. Caudle had died, the Radcliffe Trust indicated that they were going to put the property on the market. They were very generous in the time they gave us, thankfully, but their patience did finally run out. We had Power to Change money, and we were able to purchase the building. We completed in April 17, at which point we were also able to employ a professional cost consultant.
I think it's fair to say that when we got there, there was this big aspiration for the building, but the pot of money that was available for it wasn't there. So she knew where she needed to be, as in producing a house that she could rent out and a hall that she could use. So she just needed some input, some professional advice on how to do that process and how to get there, really.
It became very clear very quickly that we didn't have enough funding with Power to Change alone to do what we needed to do.
It was clear at some point that the scheme needed to be put into 2 phases. So it was agreed or decided that phase 1 was the house part of the development with the substructure and the superstructure to the cafe area, and then phase 2 of the building being everything else of the hall.
And that's when we began discussions with the Architectural Heritage Fund about loan funding, about social investment into the building. We also began to think about a community share offer.
Future Wolverton did a really good job of winning hearts and minds in the local community, and they raised significant funds through community shares.
We worked with FX, who are an ethical investment platform who specialise in supporting community benefit societies and social businesses to raise funds through community shares.
We passed this building every day and it looked as if it was going to rack and ruin, and it would just be nice to do it up, renovate it, refurbish it and put it to good community use. It seemed to me that there were lots of winners from it, particularly with the connection with Slated Row School. It just helps to bring the community together, I think.
And it enabled people to give at a level that they feel comfortable giving with. And I mean, we were able to give a modest amount, but feeling that it would make a bit of a difference.
We have 115 shareholders, so people who own a part of this building. It may be 50 quid's worth or it may be £10,000 worth, but they all have a stake in this building and they will all earn a small amount of interest from their investment. All of our investors, I think, both those who live locally and those who don't, because we had investors from across the UK, invested in this project because they believed in what we were doing and they believed in the importance of giving the students at Slated Row work-related learning that would enable them to move forward with their lives. Delighted now that we have relationships with some of those shareholders, and one of the most important relationships is with Philippa and Bob Wills. Philippa is Joe Caudle's sister, and Philippa has been a constant source of support and encouragement to me over the last few years, and she's visited a number of times, and she unveiled our bench in memory of Joe and Margaret.
All the ground around the building was very overgrown. Future Wolverton had the undergrowth and so on cleared, and that transformed the appearance of the site.
It was literally cutting lots of stuff back, clearing vegetation to enable measurements to take place. It was a case of discovering buildings that were overgrown with ivy, and it was almost like discovering the secret garden.
When all that undergrowth that had surrounded the building for so long suddenly disappeared, and I saw how huge it was, because the site is massive, but I don't think anybody really knew that it was that big. But that moment when Bridgeman had cleared and we saw what we had was incredible, actually.
The tree officer came and did a survey and looked at all the diseased, dangerous and dying trees. Then obviously planning permission is sought to remove those and take those down.
There were trees that were protected and we had to keep. There are enough trees and there's enough greenery to balance the new work, but it's a lot more space than there was originally.
Throughout the project, whatever could be preserved would be, including a lot of the smaller ground cover plants. So we worked with the students of Slated Row and the staff there, and they worked with our team to save as much as we could. We dug up a lot of the bulbs and a lot of the elephant ear ground cover plants that would then come back in. It's really nice for us to have worked on this project. This is probably one of the most local projects that we've worked on.
When the building work began, it was completely amazing. I think the journey has been so long for me on a personal level as well as for Future Wolverton, and just to see builders here, you know, with tools and surrounding the building with Harris fencing was just a joyous moment for me, really, and to have that professional team who felt as passionately about looking after the building as I did and the board did and the school did was just brilliant.
When I first arrived at this building, I knew, for example, that it was a Grade 2 listed building, and so therefore it's a building that we would consider to be important at the national level. And all aspects of the building and its setting are protected. Very well built with good materials, and something that speaks to us about the level of provision back in the 19th century that was given to school children, perhaps for the first time in this locality. We look at whether the building is in good productive use at the moment, or whether it is really searching for a new use, and without that new use it's perhaps going to start to fall into disrepair.
There were quite demanding requirements for preserving original features. The outbuildings were in brick. They were in a poor state. We salvaged the bricks and we used the bricks for the cafe, so that the lower level of the walls is built in the original bricks from the old buildings. There was the well that was unexpected. That was just outside the rear door of the schoolroom. This really deep brick well in a very good condition, but unfortunately we had to cover it in. What is now the kitchen, I think, was the teacher's office. The bell, which is being restored, had a pulley going down into that office.
We have here a small school bell from the old school at Wolverton. We were approached by the management committee there with a view to restoring it to full working order. As you can see, the fittings are pretty worn out. The bell hasn't been used for a long time, and as part of the restoration project they thought it would be nice to have it working again. It's a typical 19th century casting, small bell that would have been used, rung before classes and at the end of school time, perhaps as a fire alarm as well in some cases. From start to finish we're looking at about 2 months' work to make the new fittings, to make the supporting ironwork, to make the new clapper. As this bell will be situated outside in all sorts of weathers, the metalwork has to be protected by galvanising. So that needs to be done as well. And when that's all done, we will take it back to the old school, pull it up on the scaffolding and fix it back into the turret.
I was asked by Marie Osborne to mentor some apprentices who Noel Bremts were providing, but I'd never worked with 8 young people who hadn't ever painted before in their lives.
This is the first time I've done anything like this. Like at work, we work on the trains, but, you know, the most we've done is you know, take nuts and bolts apart this year. So, you know, it's a bit.
It's interesting because it's very different to what obviously we used to. Like newer buildings now are nothing like this. So obviously coming in and seeing how it used to be is very different. So it does really open your eyes that something like this can be brought back to life. Being able to see this from start to finish, like the actual changes that we've done, is incredible.
I lived in the local area, and every time I drive past it I can say to myself and anyone who's with me, yeah, I worked on that project. I definitely learned skills, painting and filling I've not really done a lot of, if any. So I've definitely taken some things away from this.
Claire and I were asked, along with a lot of local businesses, to come and help as much as we could.
Yeah, because the idea of it was a community building, so to use the community as well to build it up.
We are in the railway room.
So we've got parts of the station, images of the station, images of when the Queen visited. It's called the Old Schoolhouse. That was an obvious theme to run with.
We used school desks, we used an old school reports, and upstairs there's also pieces that we found within the house. So there were toys and books. The workers' room, it was themed around the guys that worked in the train sheds.
Reclaimed ladder that was found here that's been used as a shelving unit for books, which are all about the locality and history of Wolverton. Other local artists we've used in the artwork, and a piece of stained glass in the front window as well.
And of course we got Jane involved to do all their bespoke fabrics, which were all made with the children of the school.
The fabrics, I went for kind of more of a generic thing, so all the fabrics are the same throughout all the rooms. The project is a kind of link project with the kids from Slated Row, the school next door. Anything that we could kind of think of as a good strong image to work with, we just created these blocks and then over the weeks put things together.
Thinking about Wolverton and its history, and so it's got a really strong agricultural history.
Yeah, we kind of wanted to bring in the different elements of the town. Theming each room gave us the chance to look at the different sides of Wolverton.
I think they're going to be really successful. I've seen their apartments on Airbnb, so I know that they're open for business and ready to go. I think that sense of community ownership is really important and vital for keeping it sustainable into the long term. So obviously Future Wolverton is a cooperative organisation, we're the Co-op Foundation, so I think we recognise the importance of people having a stake in that, and if it belongs to them then it's in the interest of local people to make sure that it's a success, and it will be. I think it will be great.
One interesting part of this sort of proposal is that yes, we are able to fund buildings out of the National Lottery Community Fund, but we're as interested, if not more interested, in what happens within those buildings. We look for ideas that are community inspired, community led, and there's lots of ownership from the community, and I think the Old School project really could demonstrate a lot of those really. It's a fantastic community space that people will use, and the accommodation that they've got here is a really sort of interesting and creative use of the building that will make it sustainable. But perhaps the most interesting bit for me was the partnership with the school next door, and the fact that you're going to have young people coming over and working here and gaining skills that they can use in later life. And I think that's a really positive part of the proposal. And I think people, when I did present it, people really enjoyed that. I thought that was a real strength.
What we do at the Old Schoolhouse Cafe is we bring a group of students over here who are destined for the world of work on leaving Slated Row, and we give them a taste of what is to come, a taste of authentic real life work experience. For many of these students, it alleviates the fear and gives them confidence going into what would be the unknown without the experience they gain here. They can now go into the days that we open in the cafe without worry, to see them adapt to the challenges of working life. It's a lovely project to be involved in.
And we're seeing young people who were highly anxious actually able to do an amazing job. The huge increase in their confidence and their ability in quite challenging social situations, and this is not just us seeing it in this sheltered environment, it's being reflected on at home as well, and we've had some wonderful feedback from the families.
It's been very satisfying to work on the project, and I'm pleased to say that Jet managed the project very well, and of course the project managers, and to know that it's now back into use and a use as a school, or as part of a school, and the house fulfilling a local need.
So I think we've got a really good quality, well worked out scheme here, which has brought a new use to the building for its benefit and for the benefit of the community. And that's the point. It's allowing change to happen because there's a good objective at the end, which we've achieved.
Hugely optimistic about what this building is going to give the local community and the students and the role that it can perform in its new life, I think. And I've been blown away by people's love of the building throughout the whole process, but having the Friday Club return and seeing how delighted they were and celebrating that moment with them was brilliant. And I think that love of this building and that belief that we all have about what this building can do for the students of the school, for this community. And you know, I had some fantastic comments about how lovely it feels and what a privilege it is to be able to use this building again. It just makes the last 7 years, it makes everything worthwhile.
Well, we're here because we're celebrating being able to meet up again, our Friday Club, which we've been meeting up for years.
Once a month we all get together and we all eat cake.
The one thing I like about it the most is how the lovely people from the Slated Row School are being involved in a very active way. I think they have a lot to offer. I'm pleased that they're being involved in a big way.
I've been involved with this building for a long time, and it's lovely to see it back in this nice state. They've made a beautiful job of it.
I think it's beautiful. I really, really think it's lovely. I thought we'd lose it. I didn't think we'd get it.
And I'm really grateful the fact that it wasn't bulldozed and said that's it, you know. It's nice the fact that we've got the hall back again. We deserve it.